Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the Middle of the Pack Racing League GT4 Championship for 2022, as brought to you on the Premier Sim Racing platform known only as iRacing, available on PC. Today we mark round 6 of the 9-round calendar. That is the case. We're coming to the end of the second stage of the series. We're wrapping up the America stage today. We'll visit to Daytona International Speedway in the Sunshine State of America, known as Florida. And it is the case that with it being the 6th round, that means tonight we have a slightly different schedule from what we normally have. And let's take you through it. The times, of course, in a British Summer Time, that's BST or UTC +1. In just over 14 minutes time, we'll be getting underway with our one and only race tonight, and that is, of course, the feature race, with the fact that because it is the 6th round, much like the 3rd round, and we're at the end of a stage, we do have a feature race instead of our standard sprint, where the race duration goes to 20 minutes up to 45 minutes, and with it comes a mandatory pit stop, and indeed the addition of a strategic element on top of the need for outright pace to be up there to take the win within the respective driver's class. The racing action will be fast, it will still be frantic, but it will be the case that it has a strategic nuance to it, and we'll come to the specifics about that in due course. Tonight's broadcast, of course, being a post-round broadcast. The race itself occurred earlier this week, back on what was, if my memory serves me correctly, Wednesday the 6th of July, and we are bringing you all the racing action as if it were live using an iRacing replay file. And I, as your commentator and host, do not know who's won, what happens over the course of the racing. All I do know is the case it's going to be frantic racing action, and by the end of it, we will be crowning our America's Stage champions, albeit we'll most likely be crowning them come the start of the round 7 program, because I do believe that the stewarding verdicts are still out with regards to some incidents that have occurred today, or at least the champions have not been confirmed for the America stage. But still, that's for later. We're here for the now, and it is the case that who am I as your host and commentator? My name is Paul Walsh, also known as TX141 or Britain a Spit, depending on what media you follow me on, and it is the case that today's broadcast is being brought to you on 2 media platforms for your viewing pleasure. Firstly, if you are a YouTube user, you can go to YouTube and look up TX141TX, alternative Paul Walsh, and you'll be able to tune in via YouTube. Alternatively, if you are so Twitch inclined, you can go to twitch.tv/TX141 and tune in there. And we can see both chats, of course, and we can, of course, therefore interact with you guys and girls as you tune in and enjoy the show. Speaking of which, we say hello to GT Eddie in the Twitch chat, who says, yeehaw, indeed, it is the case. We're going to have to ride these V8s and whatever engines that these cars do have in the GT4 class, and plenty of racing to come. But it is the case with the racing to come, we should also look at the season ahead, or where the season currently stands. And as we can see here, the calendar is the case. We're now over halfway through, and today, of course, is Daytona Road Course, the America stage being wrapped up here in stage number 2. Last time out, we were at Watkins Glen in the state of New York, and really the founding circuit, if you will, of American road racing since the Second World War. And it is the case that Daytona Road Course, by comparison, does not necessarily have as much historical pedigree as Watkins Glen, but it is still a notorious circuit, and no driver's championship is complete, or indeed a driving experience is complete, without a win at Daytona, as they say. And the racing, as we said earlier, occurred on the 6th of July, but it's the case we're bringing it all as if it were live tonight. After today, it will be the case that we've taken a week's break, the second of our 2 mid-season breaks, before returning for the racing action on the 20th of July in the commencement of the Endurances stage, where we have the 3 circuits which are focused on circuits which typically feature within an endurance series calendar. So these can be in the World Endurance Championship, in the GT World Challenge calendar, you name it. These are the 3 circuits that our organisers identified as the ones that most typically come up, and those are Mount Panorama, where we kick off with the race on the 20th of July, then Spa-Francorchamps on where's the 27th of July, and then we wrap it all up at the Nürburgring Nordschleife Loop Circuit on the 3rd of August. It is the case we go from Australia to Belgium, then to Germany for 3 rounds of racing action, which will take the tone in a different direction. These will be 3 circuits where it's all about outlasting the circuit. Whereas the American stage, this second stage, has all been about point and squirt. It is the case you want to get out of each and every corner as quickly as possible and get back on that throttle immediately as soon as you clear corner apex. It is the case that American circuits are more typified by the fact they're less technical in nature and more about getting the power down as soon as possible, although you could say Road America was the exception out of the 3 we have seen in this series. And of course, this was all preceded with what was stage 1, the Formula 1 stage, which was all about technical circuits that typically feature on a Formula 1 calendar. And we kicked all the way off at the start of what was the series on the 25th of May in Interlagos in Brazil. We then went to the Austrian Ring of the Red Bull Ring, and then we went to Suzuka for the first of our feature races. So it is the case this calendar continues to develop, and well, our drivers have been enjoying it so far, there's no doubt about that. Speaking about our drivers, let's cover our overall championship standings. And we start off, of course, with the Pro Championship. And it is the case that after 5 rounds of racing, we now have Edwin Offre there leading by 3 points ahead of John Lauzon. And the story of these two could not be more different in terms of contrast. Edwin Offre, the driver who was promoted to the Pro class after a brilliant debut in the Touring Car Racing Championship earlier this year, it is the case that Offre has been showing us consistency and also improvement with each and every round. His pace has been getting stronger, but his consistency has really laid the foundations for what's been a championship campaign that's now reaping the benefits. Meanwhile, John Lauzon, the driver who you could argue is perhaps one of, if not the fastest, in terms of outright pace over a single lap within the class, but he has been plagued with absolutely abysmal luck, dating all the way back to the race at Road America, where things have just not gone his way, and every time it's been about a recovery effort. And will it be the case that Offre is leading come the end of tonight, or will it be Lauzon, given the fact that the two have very different styles of overall racing technique, but it is the case both of them are great competitors. In P3, meanwhile, we have Jerome Bajulaz there on 86 points, 10 off of our championship leader and 1 to watch out for. And it is the case the Porsche 718 GT4 Cayman that he's driving, it may not have been the fastest so far, but Bajulaz has definitely been showing that he can make it work, and that's why he's in P3. And then have a 21-point gap to Austin Farr, who's been unable to take part in the last couple of rounds, and he's not able to take part today. And we do hope to see a Farr return to the series for the 3rd stage. And then at 4 points off him in P5, Jordan Butler, who completes the top 5 there on 61 points. And Jordan Butler has found himself in a number of difficult situations with regards to incidents over the course of this series, and we do hope to see Butler come on through tonight. 10 points off of him, and outside the top 5 there's Tanner Dibble, who's only 2 points clear of John Welding, and then we have Sam Van Olst, Henry Morse and Rocco Avaf, who complete the top 10, with Jan Sauber last time out making his debut in the series, getting a good number of points on the board with a great finish on his debut in P11 on 17 points, and we're expecting plenty more from the debutant tonight. Meanwhile, as we look over to the Instant Count Championship, we can see there with the addition of a races completed column in our standings, we're going to be focusing on the drivers who completed every round or all but 1 round so far, as they're the ones who'll be allowed to compete in the Instant Count Championship come the end of the series. But you can see there is the case that our drivers with 4 or 5 races completed right now, it is the situation whereby Edwin Offre is leading by 5, well, not my apologies, doing my maths correctly there, leading by a significant margin over the rest of his peers there on 27 instant points, whereas it is the case for our next driver who is on 41. It is John Lauzon there, who has a long way to go to catch up. Meanwhile, we can see there Jerome Bajulaz and also Jordan Butler both losing ground on the 2 top drivers there, and particularly Bajulaz, who's got a lot of instant points already racked up, and he will not want to pick up too many more. We then look to the AM class standings. It is the case the complexion here is quite similar. We have a top 2 who are really charging away and battling back and forth, and then the rest of the field are having to play catch up. Justin Braggan is leading on 100 points, 2 clear Fernando Takahashi. These two, again, 2 very different styles of driver. Takahashi has been the driver who's had to really grind the rewards out with consistency, whereas Justin Braggan has been the driver with the pace and consistency developing. Well, with Fernando Takahashi being absent tonight, from what we're understanding, it's an opportunity for Justin Braggan to really extend that lead. A further 13 points behind Jermaine Warren in P3, the driver who, when he started off the season, was looking to be the outright favourite in the class, and indeed we do hope to see more from Jermaine Warren tonight, as it is the case of a very fast driver, and as I look at the entry list, in fact, he's not going to be taken to the circuit tonight, so we hope to see him return for the final stage. On 85 points there, perhaps not an indicator of where he may feel he should be after what is 5 rounds of racing. Lee Porter on 82 points there, and Lee Porter continuing to deliver those results in and out every round, with Mark Senegal there completing the top 5 on 75 points in a bit of a no man's land, 7 behind Lee Porter and the best part of 13 clear ahead of Kenny B. Smith, who's in P6. And to be fair, it's the case that while Smith has joined us quite late in the series compared to others, he's really making himself known, and particularly started at Road America, it was the case he's built up a good points haul so far. Roddy Felker in at P7 ahead of Duncan Ray's at P8, 3 points between the two of them there, and then we have Stefan Chalafu and Roger Ganesh completing the top 10, with Albert Brandt and Craig Parks P11 at P12. We then looks to the instant point count, and it is the case there, looking at our drivers with either 4 or 5 races completed, we can see right now at the top of the standings, it is Kenny B. Smith with only 6 instant points, been keeping it nice and clean and out of trouble, and can he continue to do so tonight, because he's only 6 ahead of Fernando Takahashi, and then we have Justin Braggan and Jermaine Warren, who are also looking very close. Ronnie Felker falling a bit behind alongside Lee Porter and Mark Senegal, but it is very close between our AM drivers at the moment, and it really goes to reflect it's been an AM class where the racing has been close, but it's also been very clean. Not to say the pros haven't been clean, but the AMs have taken it up a level, there's no doubt about that. We then come to the team standings, and it is the case. We can see in the team standings, there's no prizes up for grabs here. It's just a bit of prestige. Middle of the pack racing leading on 221 points to Blue Flag Motorsports' 179. It's a 42-point delta, and middle of the pack racing are definitely expanding that lead. With DNA Racing in P3 on 144, only 8 clear Goldwing Motorsports, and it's Ascension Racing and Sunday GT Turtles both on 96 points, Delta Motorsports on 22, and Motors Racing last but not least on 14. Well, just before we look to the track, we should give you an update on what is the America's Stage Championship. So this is for just the 3 rounds that make up the America's Stage, after which it will be the case that our championship winners in both the Pro and the M class will receive a small monetary prize of $5 United States, as I'm to understand it. It is the case that Tanner Dibble in the Pro class is currently leading on 51 points. Tanner Dibble has not gone astray. He's here tonight and he's looking to try and make it a mini crown, if you will, or take the stage champion, in the fact that he is right now the best part of 9 points clear of John Lauzon. But if anybody can try and overhaul that, John Lauzon will be the driver to do so, and he is only 3 points clear of Edwin Offrey. Will the two of Lauzon and Offrey focus more on the overall championship compared to the America's Stage crown? We'll have to wait and see. With Jordan Butler there in P4 on 32 points, only 1 clear of Jerome Bajulas, and then John Wilding and Jan Saber completing those who put points in this stage. We then come to the America Stage Championship, and it is the case that Justin Bragan leads 12 points clear of Fernando Takahashi and is expected to take it by default tonight, with Fernando Takahashi being absent, but we'll have to wait to see what happens in practice, with Lee Porter there in P3 on 35 points, and then Kenny B. Smith and Stefan Chalafu completing at the top 5. We then have joint on 29 points, Jermaine Warren and Mark Senegal, and particularly Jermaine Warren having a difficult America Stage, it has to be said, and then Rodney Falcon, Albert Brand completing the standings there of drivers who have scored points in the America Stage. We then look to the track tonight, and it is the case we're, of course, in the state of Florida at Daytona Beach at the Daytona International Speedway road course, made up of 12 corners as seen here from the circuit diagram provided us by simracingwiki.com. We're always grateful to them. And this circuit is made of 2 halves, effectively. You have the infield section that runs from turn 1 all the way through to the exit of turn 6, and then you have the banked oval section running from turn 7 all the way through to turn 12 to complete the lap, minus the introduction of the bus stop chicane. That is turns 8 through to 11. A very tricky chicane. It's a high-speed chicane where you want to nail both the entry and the exit as best as possible, and therefore it is the case that in the infield, expect our drivers to push hard and try to break away. If they can't break away and get the gap up to 1.5 seconds at least, then they'll find the driver behind them will gain in the toe on the banked oval points, and it will be the case, it will be the mad dash into the bus stop chicane and to the start-finish line on each and every lap. This circuit has a little something for everyone, and indeed, with the strategy at play here, you can imagine there'll be quite a bit of fuel saving, because as we come to our race rules, we can see in terms of setups, our drivers are running the iRacing baseline setup for this race, indeed all races. That is a fixed setup. This is a fixed setup series. No tuning is allowed to the car other than a change of brake bias. And our car fuel loads have been restricted to 50% for this round, as they are indeed for all rounds. And in the feature race, firstly, there is no qualifying for tonight. The grid shall be set as a reverse grid based on the Drivers' Championship standings following the previous round. So coming out of the round at Watkins Glen, the Pro class will start ahead of the AM class as separated by an approximate 5-second gap. And then drivers who have yet to score championship points shall start at the back of their class, out of fairness in respect to the drivers who have been competing so far. The race will be starting under a manual double fold rolling start, as it always does, with the formation being held up to the start-finish line, after which drivers may go racing. Each driver will have 2 fast repairs available. A drive-through penalty will be awarded to a driver who accumulates 25 or more instant points. But the most important thing here, and perhaps the thing that our drivers will have to consider, and particularly with regards to that quandary of fuel saving, is that there is a mandatory pit stop where our drivers must take on fuel. That's correct. If they don't take on fuel, they won't get to the end of the race unscathed on fuel capacity, and they'll come to a grinding halt, and that is where the big question of fuel saving will come on in. Well, without further ado, that's enough rules, regulations and whatnot. I know what you're all here for. You're here for the racing, and indeed I am as well. And as we do look to our drivers making their way on the round right now, it is the case that in this final practice session, we see the newcomer today, a new debutant of Blake Phillips here, the privateer, parking it up in the pit lane right now in the number 225 BMW M4. And you may recall at last time out, I talked a little bit about Fernando Takahashi moving away from the BMW M4 and really enjoying the Mercedes AMG, but we were missing the BMW. Well, Blake Phillips seems to have answered the call and said that we're going to be seeing another BMW out of the circuit, and that's fantastic news, and we wish Blake all the best of luck as he makes his debut in the series tonight. And from what I'm seeing so far, quite a fast driver, and we'll have to wait and see how it plays out in practice. That M4 has been a car that not many wanted to pick, given the fact it's not quite there in terms of one lap pace. It's more of a race car built around its consistency, and its ability to be strong and stable even with increasing tyre wear. But could we see Blake Phillips here do something different with the car? As we come to the end of the final practice session, it is time for us to go racing. As we say hello to John Wilding in the YouTube chat there, and now the grid is formed. Well, we'll take you through that grid, I do believe. Can we take you through that grid? No, we cannot take you through that grid due to the limitations of replay file. So instead, we will wait for the grid to be formed, and then as our drivers are making the way on around on this partial formation lap, we will take you on through. But we know Blake Phillips will have to start at the very back of the field. He is an AM driver. He's joined us in the AM class, and as he's got no championship points, he will have to start from the back of said class as per the ruling. But it is the case, meanwhile, with that reverse drivers championship in effect, with the pros ahead of the AMs, we can see it right up there on the front. I do believe, unless I'm very much mistaken, that is one of the two DNA Racing drivers. In fact, we've got John Wilding there, and alongside him, well, I'm just trying to see who that is alongside him. Where it is the case, we've got another Mercedes there, and I believe that is Tanner Dibble alongside John Wilding on the front row of the Pro class, and the gridding process is complete. Behind the safety car, they will go very shortly, but it is Tanner Dibble and John Wilding who start on the front row for the pros. Behind him is John Lauzon and Jerome Bajulaz, and then we have Edwin Offrey, who will be starting last but not least in the Pro class in P5. Only 11 drivers here today. It's a bit of a small field, but still, I think the calibre of the drivers will make up for the absence of the quantity of cars. Meanwhile, in the AM class, it will be Rodney Felker who starts on pole with Kenny B. Smith behind him and Mark Senegal alongside Kenny B. Smith, and then we'll have Lee Porter and Justin Bragan behind them, and then last but not least, of course, on his debut will be Blake Phillips here, and we'll wait to see how he gets on. I do believe that is the NBC News logo, unless I'm mistaken, on the side of the car. Indeed, a very fetching livery there, really does stand out. But enough about liveries and whatnot. He's definitely making himself known in terms of livery on the car. Can he make himself known in terms of his driving and racing abilities tonight? We're going to find out over 45 minutes very shortly. But as we do look right now to John Wilding as he takes us on around, we do look to the blimp camera here. It's the Pro class who will get us underway, and then it will be the AMs who follow suit a little bit further back by that 5-second gap here at Daytona Road Course. And well, it will be the question, will we see John Lauzon or Edwin Offrey take the win, or could we see a new winner in the Pro class today? It's all going to be revealed very shortly as we now wait for John Wilding to take us away. Lights out, away we go here for round number 6 of the GT4 Championship 2022 as John Wilding leads the pros down to turn number 1. As they do, he covers off his teammate Tanner Dibble, but meanwhile John Lauzon trying to go round the outside of Jerome Bajulaz nice and early here as they roll their way through the opening corner, but Bajulaz using the handling characteristics of the Porsche 718 to his advantage, and Lauzon actually losing out significantly there in the run down. Now is Bajulaz going to try and make the run at the inside into Dibble? No, he can't quite, he has to wait instead. Meanwhile in the AM class, Mark Senegal getting a very strong start here ahead of Rodney Felku, so I think we're called napping by comparison, and that's Kenny B. Smith making ground already as they roll their way through turns 1 and 2. Now towards turn number 3, but you can see here how it's the case that Justin Bragan getting ahead there of Kenny Smith. Blake Phillips makes ground on Lee Porter straight away as they roll the way through turn number 3. But I think there's been a bit of a mistake there. I think that is potentially Rodney Felker there just locking up. Turkey getting a bit wrong on the exit at turn number 3. We can't quite tell what's happened other than Rodney Felker has dropped all the way down, and that promotes everybody else in the AM class up positions as they make the way up towards turn number 5. And Rodney Felker running on straight there. Something's gone very wrong with that Aston Martin. I think there's something wrong with the brakes, but meanwhile Mark Senegal just running off into the distance, and it's to Kenny B. Smith here right now who's got everybody else tucked in behind him as Rodney Felker has had to jump to the pits with a technical issue to the car. But meanwhile we look from our AMs up to our pros here, and after a strong start John Wilding makes his way into the bus stop chicane for the first time of asking as he rolls it on through, and as he does you can see Jerome Bajulaz there having to now think about going defensive versus John Lauzon. This is where the Porsche will really feel the pinch compared to all the other cars in the GT4 class, in the fact that it does not have that straight line speed. It does have good top end, but it's the case it takes a long time to accelerate there. Meanwhile the McLaren 570S, as we see here, that's Lauzon trying to make his way on through. As we've got, that is Tanner Dibble, no, my apologies, that is what is John Wilding going slowly? He's received a slowdown because of the bus stop chicane. He's cut track limits, so it's Tanner Dibble who leads. But we focus here on the battle for P2 as they run side by side all the way round here. It's Majulas on the inside. It's going to be Lauzon going around the outside, and Majulas backs off there. He lifts off before the braking zone into turn 1. I think a smart move there and just hedging his bet safely as they make the way on to another lap. And as they roll their way on through, you can see John Wilding with that slowdown, how much and how painful a slowdown is here at Daytona, in the fact that he's dropped all the way back to the back of the pro field. Meanwhile, we look to the AMs here. Mark Senegal in a very lonely P1 right now, effective P6 overall. And then we've got Justin Braggan here, who's just battling with both Phillips and also Smith for that P2 position in the M class, P7 overall, as they make the way on to the second lap. As they come on down at the moment, I'm hearing that Roddy Felker is still in the pit lane. They're still having to do work on the car. They're trying to figure out what's gone wrong with it. We do hope to see the Aston Martin come out to the circuit in due course, but we see there Phillips going a little bit deep on the exit of 3, and as they make the way now up towards turns 4 and 5 in short order, Kenny B. Smith really trying to go on the offensive, but I don't think he can find a way through it at this time. As they make the way in towards turn 5, I think he's going to have to play the long game here and wait for that opportunity. That BMW is looking quite strong in the infield section, it has to be said, as they make the way out of the second, the infield hairpins, and now towards turn number 6. But then we look from our AMs back up to our pros here, and here is Tanner Dibble, who as he makes his way up towards the bus of chicane, we ride aboard the gearbox here at the Mercedes as it heads into the chicane for the second time, and you can see there Lauzon lifting off very early, lifting off about 50 to 75 metres before his braking zone, being very smart there Lauzon, knowing that he can afford to fuel save here and then run in the toe of his rivals. They make their way onto the second bank, onto turn number 12 they go, and as they come charging on through, we say good afternoon to Bizzle5 in the YouTube chat. It says good afternoon everyone, it's good to see you here Bizzle, and well Dibble right now, he's going to worry about the fact Lauzon's going to try and take the high road here as they make the way to the timing line. It's a very long run, it feels like an eternity to make it all the way to turn number 1 once again, and to be fair, we're only 4 minutes in to it's the 40 minutes, my apologies, I thought it was 45 minutes, I think that's a mistake on my notes, but as they roll their way into left-hander this time of turn number 1, you can see Rodney Felker leaving the pit lane, but really struggling there. That Aston Martin, I think, is being patched together, but it's not in a happy place, that Aston Martin, but as they roll their way down and towards turn number 3 here, and head into what is the first of the 2 infield hairpins, you can see how John Lauzon staying very close, but just not able to get in there, and in return, Jerome Majulas really closing up as they make the way out of the hairpin and down towards turn number 5. That push so strong through the corners, particularly the low-speed corners, it gains very quickly. But then as soon as we get onto any of these straightaways, that's where it suffers. And you can see again the Blue Flag Motorsports driver just closing up monumentally under braking. He's just able to be more aggressive on entry into the corner. But then when they have to power out and head up towards the next corner, that's where he's dropped in the number 9 car as he rolls his way on through. And we're hearing that Kenny B. Smith and Lee Porter have been exchanging P9 overall. That is P4 in the AM class, albeit we can't see it on camera at the moment. But thankfully our cameraman does find Kenny B. Smith now, and well, it is the case. I think he's got ahead of Lee Porter and is trying to get away as they roll their way through the West turn number 5 and heading up towards turn number 6. But these two have dropped away to a degree from the rest of the AM drivers in that top 3. And well, speaking of our top 3 AM drivers, here is Blake Phillips, who right now is chasing after Justin Braggan, and we ride on board here with Blake Phillips inside the BMW M4 as he tries to find his way past, and well, as he heads on around through turn number 7 and up towards the bus stop chicane of turns 8 through to 11. It is the case, he's getting closer and closer. That BMW getting a nice draft there, but it's the case that Phillips just lifts off and well, takes it nice and easy. Ooh, a little bit of internet connectivity issues there for Justin Braggan by the looks of things. Blake Phillips has been wisely backing off. Perhaps he's just a little bit worried about tapping the rear of a driver who is disappearing into the ether and then reappearing all of a sudden. But Blake Phillips losing some ground, but again, he'll gain that ground back as they make their way through the bank of 12. He can very comfortably run in this manner. Mark Senegal, meanwhile, the leader of the AM class, he's 17.5 seconds up the road from all of this. Would you believe it? And just run off into distance. And with that, he's not 17.5 seconds up the road. Well, Bomber Biscuit is the case. He's 1.5 seconds up the road. He's 17.5 seconds off of the pro drivers. And as they make their way onto the timeline here and onto another lap, it is the case that Mark Senegal is gradually being reeled in fact, the opposite is occurring. But right now, it is the case. Oh, get his speed. And Justin Braggan there goes very wide into turn number 1. And it is one of those situations where I think he's just missed his braking point, or the car's locked up. And Blake Phillips now up into P2, which on his debut, I think something he will be absolutely smiling about, but he's got a long way to go. As meanwhile, we do look from our AMs to our third place driver in the Pro class right now, and our pros are staying close together even after the opening 5 minutes here, which is absolutely great to see. Some of the drivers will space out, others will stay together, but our top 5 overall, indeed all 5 of our pro drivers separated from first to 5th right now by only 3 seconds, if that. That shows you how close it is, and they are pushing all the way on as they head around towards the bus stop chicane once again. But you can definitely see how John Wilding, after that slowdown early on, really seems now to be a bit cagey about pushing too hard. And I wonder here whether he's trying to do some extra fuel saving to make up race time by having a shorter pit stop by comparison with his peers as they roll the way into the chicane once more. But you can see here as he heads through the chicane, there's no worries of the DNA Racing driver. I think it was just an unexpected error, although he cuts a huge amount of the exit line there coming out of the chicane. He's got to be careful of that. If he keeps doing it, he could be at risk of getting another slowdown, and that's going to severely hurt his race as they make the way on around. But meanwhile, Bajula's here tucked in behind Lauzon. He's going to try and go for the move here. I think this is going to be bold to try and do it with such a long run to turn 1. You can see at first he gets the slingshot, but then as soon as he comes out of the draft, that McLaren in the draft of Dibble is just able to stay alive. But Bajula's is going to try and go around the outside here. He's going to be brave on the brake in between the two of them, and Bajula's just cannot quite get it done. But he's got a lot of rotation in that Porsche. You can see Lauzon there having to give him the space. Bajula's really putting that Porsche in a good place to go on the offensive. And as they roll the way down into turn number 3, you can see now there is the case with this battle, and John Wilding has been able to catch on up as they roll their way through turn number 3. Well, as they come charging on out here, now it's the case of Wilding has got it all to do if he wants to try and get back to the front of the field with his teammate and make it a 1-2 for DNA Racing as they make the way through 4 and up into 5, and Wilding takes a peek to the inside into 5 versus Vajulas, but he can't quite find it at the moment. And you can see Edwin Offrey there, very interestingly, the Ascension Racing driver not trying to get into the fights right now. I think he's playing the long game here, which is he's anticipating if he can do more fuel saving than everybody else, he could jump himself right to the front of this pack come the pit stop. But we'll have to wait and see whether he's going to pit early, whether he's going to be the last to pit, or whether he'll pit with everybody else, because that will also throw a conundrum into the mix. The earlier he can make his pit stop, of course, he can undercut and potentially give himself clear track. But if he loses the slipstream too early, he goes to the pits too early, could he potentially lose himself some race time? And that's something that will be on his mind, indeed all of our drivers' minds. And speaking of what's on the mind of our leader in the AM class right now, it is the case that Mark Senegal, our McLaren 570S drivers, you see him here making his way through the turn 7 banking for Sunday GT Turtles. He's not doing anything wrong here, but I can tell you one thing that is going wrong is the fact that P2 driver Blake Phillips is closing up little by little. It's the case that last lap, the two of them were equally matched in terms of lap time, both delivering a 54.8. But as they make their way into the bus stop chicane this time, Justin Bragan as well in P3 in the AM class here, P8 overall, the MOP racing driver who we do say hello to as Bizzle5 in the YouTube chat. So if you are looking to interact with Justin Bragan in the YouTube chat, he is there at the moment. But it is the case when we say hello to you, of course, Justin. It is the case the middle of the pack racing driver here pushing on as, hold up a second, what has happened to John Wilding? I think we've lost John Wilding. I think there's been a disconnect, and that is the equivalent of an engine failure for the pro driver, which if so, John Wilding has lost out massively. No, he's back, but that was a bit of a scare there. The fact he disappeared for some time, and hopefully that's not a sign of things to come. He's jumped past Bajulas, in fact, he's up to P3, but we haven't seen what's happened, and well, that is going to be something that he's going to be worried about. I think Bajulas as well, running so close to him, is going to be worried about as they make the way into turn 5. Bajulas looks up the inside here, he's going to go for it. He's going to have to make Wilding go deep, and as they roll their way through the corner here, Bajulas gets ahead, but he'll have the acceleration, but as they make the way up towards turn 6, he can't shut the door. You can see he wants to try and creep to the middle of the road, but he's got to be conscious of the fact that that very long-nosed Mercedes is still there. But Vajulas gets up into P3, Wilding backs out there, and you can see Onofre has been brought right up into this right now, and I think the Ascension Racing driver will be rubbing his hands together very gradually and thinking, this is excellent. The fact that I'm right there with all 4 other drivers in my class, and I can just stay with them if he is fuel saving. Of course, he might be pushing as hard as possible, to be fair, to stay with them. You never know, and that's the big thing about racing the Daytona road course, is the fact that you do have that fuel saving conundrum thrown on in. Some people call it the slipstream train circuit in iRacing, given the fact that there's such an emphasis on the slipstream on the banks and even in the infield section to a degree, but right now it's delivering some very tactical racing, albeit underneath the layer of fast racing action that we're seeing on our camera and TV screens right now. But as we look from our pro driver at the rear of the pro pack to our pro leader right now, Tanner Dibble here, the DNA Racing driver, just keeping his head down, not letting what's going on behind him get on his mind. I think he's just here to try and deliver that result. But you can see as they make the way across the timeline, we've almost got 3 wide here. It's Lauzon on the inside, he defends, Jerome Gilles parked in behind, and then John Wilding backs off as well. And I think all 3 drivers there, they're all itching or salivating at the prospect of a 3 wide moment. At least, well, perhaps not John Lauzon, but it is the case as they make the way through 2 and up into 3. They're definitely getting close together. As meanwhile, we've got a change of the lead here in the AM class. It was Mark Senegal leading, but you can see that he's on the low line, tucked in behind Justin Braggan. Blake Phillips is trying to go round the outside here in the BMW M4. They roll the way into turn 1, and we were saying about Mark Senegal was being called, and in the end he has been called, but Justin Braggan is now your leader. Blake Phillips in P2 still, and it's literally the case that everybody's swapping places around him. He's not gaining or losing. But as they make the way down to turn 3, oh goodness me, Mark Senegal coming in very hot, and he sends Justin Braggan for a spin, and that traps Blake Phillips as well. Now who is going to be coming out of this? The leader, it will be Kenny B. Smith, who comes on through. They're literally parting the seas of these stricken cars, and he's up into the lead of the AM class here. Justin Braggan gets underway. Lee Porter is just behind him as they make the way back up to speed, but that was very unfortunate. Mark Senegal there just missing his braking zone by about 30 metres, well, by the looks of things, unless those brakes just seized. And then it's the case that Blake Phillips right now, well, I think he was absolutely happy at the potential prospect of capitalising, only to find he got pinned off circuit, and now he's got it all to do again. But that was very unfortunate, and our AM drivers have seen a major incident incurred. But meanwhile, we look from our AMs to our pros once again, and Tanner Dibble, who leads as they make the way onto the turn 12 bank. It is the case they roll the way on through. John Lauzon now starting to put some distance between himself and Bajulaz, but as they make their way onwards and round towards the start-finish line here, it does look as though Lauzon is starting now to want to push for the lead of this race. You can see just the gap he's opened up to Bajulaz. It could also be the case that Bajulaz gone a bit wrong for the bus stop chicane, but we'll focus on that battle between Bajulaz and Wilding here as they make their way down towards turn number 1. It's going to be the Porsche driver on the inside here versus the Mercedes driver Wilding on the outside. And as they roll the way through, it is the case that Edwin Offred just stays there. And to be fair, as we ride on board here with the Ascension Racing driver, we'll listen in and see if he's doing any fuel saving before those braking zones. He's definitely doing a little bit of short shifting there. You can see it on the dashboard on the left hand side of your screen, but let's listen into turn 5. Might be a sign of a small lift there and just a little bit of lighter braking to compensate for it, but right now it does seem that Edwin Offred being very smart, him playing the longer game as we talked about previously. We're not quite at the halfway point yet. We're 14 and a half minutes by the time they get onto the bank in the turn number 7 out of this 40-minute race, but as they roll the way through and out of the corner right now, it's definitely looking as though Offred is being very smart about this and not really trying to put any pressure on. But as they come through turn number 7 and down towards the bus stop chicane, it is the case that we look from them to our leaders right now. And well, here's Lauzon. He's going to try and go outside to inside into the chicane here. The McLaren driver will be on the outside initially. Tanner Dibble covers him off, and I think Dibble here is working 2 minds. He's working for his own race, but also he's working for DNA Racing. He wants Wilding to be able to catch up to this fight because these two have broken away. You can see that gap. It was 9 tenths come this point on the previous lap. It's now 7 tenths. I think Dibble is just using the grunts of the Mercedes, but also its size in order to pin down Lauzon. But if Lauzon finds his way on past here, that's going to really change the complexion of this pro class as they make the way to the end of lap number 8. They will head on to lap number 9 very shortly. It's going to be Dibble on the low line. It's going to be Lauzon in the middle of the road as they make the way to turn 1. It'll be a battle on the brakes. We can see Bajulaz battling with Wilding behind. We can see that it's going to be Lauzon trying to go around the outside, but he just gets a little bit of understeer there under brake, and he has to go deep into the corner, and this is going to open things up because Bajulaz right now tries to get on in, but Lauzon comes back strong here versus Dibble as they roll the way through too. But Dibble stays firm. He outbrakes the McLaren driver, and once again they say as they roll the way out of turn 3, out of the horseshoe hairpin as it's nicknamed, and now they make their way down towards turn number 5. But this battle continues to intensify here. You can see Lauzon literally hugging the back of Dibble's car here, not trying to push him to get as close as possible to absolutely upset and distract Dibble. But right now Dibble's having none of it, it must be said. He's been very smart behind the wheel, and as they roll their way out of the corner up towards turn number 6, Lauzon's so close right now. I think he'd be very, very tempted to dive to the inside, but if he does that dive, of course, he's going to lose out. Speaking of losing out, there, Tanner Dibble making a small mistake when getting the power down and almost sending the car wide, but as they make the way through the turn 7 bank, it's going to be Lauzon who takes the low line this time, and I think he may have finally done it, albeit only for now, because keep in mind, once they come to the end of the turn 7 bank, it'll be the bus stop chicane, and then it's the long run through turn 12 to turn 1, and that's where Dibble in that Mercedes will be able to unleash the beast of that Mercedes V8 engine as they roll their way into the bus stop chicane. Here you can see Lauzon with the engine in the centre of the mass, therefore being located further back in the car, being mid-engine rear-wheel drive compared to the Mercedes being front-engine rear-wheel drive. That's giving Lauzon that rotation. He can carry more speed through the chicane, but now this is where we should expect Dibble is really going to gain as they make their way on through. We're right on board here with Tanner Dibble. You can see already up to top gear and closing very rapidly as they head down, but it's a small tap there to the rear of the McLaren. A little bit of bump drafting being deployed here, but that's also Badulaz on your right. You briefly saw him there, and you can just see him on the right side of the picture as they battle under braking into turn 1, and as they roll the way on through here, Dibble's got nowhere to go other than stay, but he's got the Porsche and he's outside. It's very close on the apex, and as they roll their way on through, oh goodness me, and that's Wilding having to take a bit of evasive action now. I think they were going too slow for the Mercedes driver to be able to move out the way in time, but we look to Tanner Dibble here as he battles side by side with Badulaz as they roll their way through turn number 3, and as they exit the first hairpin, it is the case that Dibble goes wide as well. DNA Racing, it's almost as they synchronise it up, both of them going wide, and now as a result, that promotes Edwin Noffred to P3. He gains 2 places for the price of 1. I think he'll be saying thank you very much, if you don't mind me saying, that as they make their way through turn number 5, it is the case that John Lauzon is now your pro leader, and he's got Badulaz behind him and Noffred further back, but now can Lauzon make the break here, given the fact that behind him is the Porsche Cayman, which doesn't have that straight line speed? We'll have to wait and see, but as they coming out and up onto the turn 7 bank, meanwhile we look to our AM class, and it is Justin Bragan who still leads. But for him, and interestingly, we've got Kenny Smith here, who is gaining gradually on Bragan on that last lap. Well, in fact, it was the case on that last lap, Bragan was the faster of the two, but Kenny staying in touch through the toe as they make their way down into turn number 5, and as they roll their way through the right-hander here, it is one of those situations where I think for Smith, he just wants to stay there just within arm's reach. If Bragan can get that gap up to 1.5 seconds, that toe, that slipstream effect will start to disappear away. It'll still be there, but it'll be minor by comparison, and we have to keep in mind, of course, these GT4s, they don't have too much downforce. They're effectively road cars with some slight tweaks to them, particularly the addition of a rear spoiler, and therefore they really do punch a massive hole through the air in front of them, and if you're right behind one, you'll gain significantly. It's almost as if you're trying to shove a massive 1.5 ton brick through the air, and the driver behind gains on that as a result. But speaking of gaining, here's the 2 leaders in the pro class. That's Lauzon, who peels to the outside and tucks in behind Badulaz, who comes through to take the lead of the class. And well, we have seen time and time again since the season opener, Badulaz is pacing that Porsche on a single lap. Now, can he start to extract something out of the Blue Flag Motorsport 718, or will it be the case that instead he finds himself caught in this back and forth tussle in the slipstream? We'll have to wait and see as they roll their way through turn number 3. But meanwhile, we must look from our pro leader to Lee Porter here, who has been battling with Blake Phillips as they make their way onwards towards the timeline here. And you can see that Blake Phillips letting the car roll out rather wide there onto the flat portion before they head onto the bank for the start-finish line. But it is the case that Blake Phillips has just found his way past Lee Porter after being dropped all the way down the order through that instant into turn number 3, laps to go. And Lee Porter here still playing the long game and just tucking it in behind, but Lee Porter hasn't quite been on the pace here so far today, and I do wonder whether it's the case he's just simply at the limit and Daytona's not the place. We feel as though he's as happy in the car compared to other circuits in the past, but we'll have to wait and see for the MOP Racing driver as he gives a pursuit after Blake Phillips. But as they make the one out here, Blake Phillips' pace right now would put in the fastest of anybody in the AM class, albeit he's had the toe. So I get the feeling that Blake Phillips is matching Justin Bragan and Kenny Smith, or somewhere in between the two of them in terms of pace as they all roll on down into turn number 5. But meanwhile, we look from our AM drives back to our leaders in what is the pro class. Indeed, the whole pro class still nose to tail here after half distance is reached. It is the case, and that's time distance, of course. We've just gone over the 20-minute mark. We're hence the end of the 21st minute. We've still got 19 minutes plus the final lap to go, and we've still got a pit stop for everybody involved, including in Rodney Felker, who had that very early jump to the pits, but he is going to have to take on fuel if he wants to get to the end of the race. So Rodney Felker here today, I think, just trying to survive to the end now and get the car to the line. Will we see anybody peeling in? No, we don't, but this is the interesting part. Edwin Offray here looks to go around the outside on the high line. Is he trying to gain places now before the pit stop as they roll their way into turn one? He goes around Lauzon. Can he make it a 2-for-1 special under braking? No, he can't, but he does go out the corner. He gets snap oversteer. Lauzon there literally dodges at the last minute. Cat-like reflexes from Lauzon to avoid making contact with his championship rival. And as they roll their way down into turn number 3, you see Tanner Dibble there taking the sniff to the inside, but he's not close enough to force the issue and force the door open. It's the case that they stay as they were, but that was very near the mark there, and it was worth an offer trying to go for the move on the 2-for-1, but then just getting the power down. It's the case that Mercedes engine under the hood of the Aston Martin just not working out that V8 as they roll their way here to turn number 5. But you can see here Tanner Dibble trying to open the door on an offer, and he's doing very well to do so. Getting his nose in there, and as they roll their way out of 5 and up towards 6, this is going to cause an offer to fall off at the top 2. As meanwhile into the pits, he's our first driver to come on in. It is Leapwater making his way on in for his mandatory stop, promoting Mark Senegal up to P4 in the AM class, P9 overall, as we see the Sunday GT Turtles driver pressing on here after that incident earlier on. But as he rolls his way through turn number 3 right now, we do look from him to what is Kenny Smith here, who is continuing to stay with Justin Braggin, albeit he's not really gaining on Justin Braggin too much. But I think it's the case the privateer right now just in a comfortable flow and hunting after the AM leader and thinking more about that pit stop when it does arrive. But as they roll their way through the left hander here, we do look from our drivers battling at the front of the AM field to the drivers battling at the bottom of the pro field, and that's John Wilding, who has just found his way past Tanner Dibble. I think it may be the case it's been a bit of a swap between the two of them. That gap has opened up to 1.1 seconds, which would indicate that Dibble made a small mistake going through the bus stop chicane. Alternatively, he's lifted off. But speaking of drivers who are not lifting off in the meantime, here is Jerome Bajulas, who leads, but he's not going to quite finish the whole lap, the leader, as they make their way to the timeline. It's going to be 3 wide here, heading down towards turn number 1. My goodness, and John Lauzon in between the two of them. He passed the C's there, as did Moses all those years ago, and as they roll their way through turn number 1, it's the case that John Lauzon retakes the lead of this race, going through the middle of Bajulas and Onofre. And well, will it be the case now that Lauzon will once again be able to try and break away, or will he be held in check? You can see John Wilding there in P4, staying right there with them as we're hearing that Rodney Felker's into the pits for his scheduled stop by the sounds of things. And John Wilding right now, I think, absolutely salivating the prospect of seeing the top 3 in class literally ahead of him as Blake Phillips is into the pits for his scheduled stop. And I suspect all of our pros will be coming in together at this rate, given the fact that none of them have decided to come in as of yet. It'll be who is the first one to flinch. That is the question. Will it trigger a cascade, or will it be the case that we see one come in and everybody else stay out, which could really upset the momentum? Because keep in mind, of course, so long as they're all running a pack like this, they're all gaining in the toe of each other, minus the leader, who is John Lauzon at this point. But as soon as they come in, they lose that toe, and therefore they are at risk of losing lap time. Lap on lap, because they don't have somebody to give them that extra 2, 3, 4, 5 miles an hour on each and every bank straight, if you will. And John Wilding here will know all about that. Tanner Dibble's just behind them. The DNA Racing drivers at the back of this pack right now. I don't think they're going to be staying at the back of this pack all the way to the end. I think they do have a plan as they roll the way through the bus stop this time. 24.5 minutes complete. We've still got just over 15 to go, and we are waiting for those very first pit stops to be in the class as we do look to our leader here, John Lauzon. And right now, what can the Blue Flag Motorsports driver do in terms of strategy? Does he go now? Does he try to force everyone to come in behind him, or does he go later? We'll wait and see as he makes his way past the pit entry here. And as he does he peel on in? And no, he does not. And Bajulas is going to go for the move here, going to go to the high line as they make their way all the way down towards turn number 1. And Bajulas just simply coming on through there, and John Lauzon tucking in behind. John Wilding going round the outside of Onofre here. Can he make it count? I think he can. It's going to be very on the limit. He's just about going to make it. It is the case that John Wilding from DNA Racing gains the places up to P3 overall and in the pro class as they make their way down towards turn number 3 once more. As they roll the way on through for the 14th time of asking, it is the case that it's almost as if all 5 of them are playing a really extreme game of car chess here. Nobody wants to give away the ultimate move they've got planned. They're all thinking about 3 or 4 steps in front of one another, and that's what we love to see here at Daytona at the road course, is the fact that when they're running like this, it really is the case that nobody can afford to make a single mistake, for the simple reason it'll drop them out the hunt for the win, and at the same time nobody can afford to call that pit stop too soon in case they end up falling behind in terms of pace when they've got that clear air. But you can see here John Wilding in the middle of it all. He's got 2 cars in front, 2 cars behind. He's the one who really, if he wanted to really upset the rhythm, he would be the one who comes in first, and then it will be to an off-route or Dibble to follow him in. And I would imagine that whatever Wilding does, it will be a Dibble who follows him in as well, because the DNA Racing drivers want to work together, whereas Bajulas, Lauzon and Onofre do not have that luxury of having a teammate to work with as such. As we see here, Wilding really gained a lot of momentum in the run down towards the bus stop chicane, but that was Lauzon really backing off before the braking zone, backing off about 100 metres in fact before he dabbed the brakes on. And well, I think it's the case there that Lauzon being safe and sound, Wilding recognising it, peeling to the middle and then leaving the car there in the middle of the road until they all got back up to speed. But as we ride aboard the gearbox here of Jerome Bajulas, as they make the way for the bank control this time, you can see it's the case that McLaren gets it closer and closer, and I think it's the case that Bajulas here goes high. Will that be? Yep, that is Lauzon coming on in, and with him comes Dibble as well. So it's the case that DNA Racing are splitting the strategies here. They're covering off both packs as they make the way into turn number 1. Does Bajulas with Wilding trying to go round the outside here, and Onofre is going to stay behind them as they make the way through 1 and 2 and down towards 3. But this split of strategies from DNA Racing could benefit them in terms of getting one driver right up there. Oh, goodness me, Onofre tapping the rear of John Wilding, sending Wilding for a spin, and well, I think that was a mistake under braking, just a little bit too late on the brakes. But Wilding's race now will be severely compromised, and that will give Bajulas a break, but will it be enough? As meanwhile we look to drivers coming out the pits, it's Lauzon ahead of Dibble, still as they emerge from the pit lane here, but critically for Dibble, he's right behind the blue flag motorsports driver and could still benefit from the tow, and they're just coming out ahead of the Anfield who yet to pit, and that's Justin Bragan who makes his way down through 2 and into 3. But the fact that the pros have just come out ahead of the AMs, they've timed this to perfection as Bart Senegal's into the pits from P3 in the AM class, or P8 overall. And right now Justin Bragan and Kenny Smith still need to come on in as they make the way through turn number 4 here. Kenny Smith starting to lose a little bit of ground to Justin Bragan as they head into turn number 5. And I think it is the case that Bragan now just extracting a bit more lap time by comparison, and that's only going to be felt even more by the fact that Smith is not going to have the tow of the driver in front of him as they make their way through. But here's Blake Phillips who makes his way through turn number 1. He's got Lee Porter behind. That's Mark Senegal in the pits who's leaving the pit lane now. So that's why we saw an update on our timing screens. It's the case that Blake Phillips, who took that pit stop early with Lee Porter just behind him, these two have jumped ahead of Mark Senegal through the pit stops, and Lee Porter, they're going a bit deep into turn 3 but staying with Phillips for the time being as they make the way down towards what is turn number 5. Kenny Smith of course and Justin Bragan yet to pit, as into the pits comes Edwin Onofre. Off camera I can see him as I look outside my commentary box window, but Jerome Bajulas interestingly staying out, and Wilding's into the pits, so it's only Bajulas who's yet to pit in the pro class, and it is our 2 leaders in the AM class who've yet to pit. But this is a very odd split in the strategy here, and I wonder if Bajulas may have called this wrong in the fact that yes, he'll have clear air, he won't have pressure, he can put in effect a qualifying lap now or 2 if he wants to try and hold on. But the problem is for Bajulas is that because he doesn't have the tow or anybody to work with, is he going to lose lap time over this lap, or if he does more than 1 lap before he comes on in? That will be the question. As meanwhile we do look from Bajulas here to John Lauzon, who has got behind, and that's Tanner Dibble and Justin Bragan. Now where is Edwin Onofre? Here he's coming out the pit lane, almost getting it wrong on the pit exit there. It's a bit cold, indeed there's not too much grip on that pit lane exit. In this case he'll come back out P5 overall, P4 in the pro class, with Wilding in the pit still after the 2 came into contact with one another. But it is the case that both of them now having to really make recovery drives out of this race after such a stellar performance for the first half, but still upwards and onwards to the pair of them. But meanwhile Justin Bragan here, with the fact that he's had Kenny Smith come in, Kenny Smith's in the pit lane right now, Justin Bragan being able to go another lap, and I think this is working out really nicely for the middle of the pack racing driver, in the fact he's got the tow of 2 pros here, and he'll have the confidence the pros will be faster than him on average per lap, but because he'll have the double draft of Lauzon and also Dibble ahead of him, he not lose out. Instead, he will have a double toe that will carry him all the way through the banked corners from turn 7 through to the end of turn number 12, and that will gain him more time over Kenny Smith, or at least that will be the logic. And speaking of Kenny Smith, where is he? He's making his way out the pit lane just now. He's had a very slow pit stop by comparison with Senegal, Porter and Phillips. Well, that is a surprise and not a welcome one for Kenny Smith, to be certain, and that has cost him a dear amount of time. I wonder if there's been a tyre change there by accident. He was only expected to take on fuel, I would suspect, but meanwhile, into the pits comes your race leader, Jerome Bajulas from Blue Flag Motorsports. He was leading the Pro class, and as he makes his way on in now, the question will be, can John Lauzon come through to retake the lead? Where will Bajulas come out? Well, Bajulas has literally stopped his box. In fact, he's missed his pit box slightly, and as John Lauzon makes his way on around, we look to the blimp camera here as he heads down towards the start-finish straight. This will give you an idea of where he is in relation to the pit lane. You can see the pit lane at the bottom of your screen right now. Bajulas is parked in that pit lane, albeit towards the end of it, as they make the way past the pit entry, the pit exit start line there. It is the case. We can see John Lauzon going into turn number 1. That is Bajulas making his way out the pit lane. It's going to be very close here, but I think Lauzon's done it. He's going to come out ahead, but not by much, as they make their way down towards turn number 3. You can see Bajulas there flashing his lights, trying to get in ahead of Lauzon immediately in order to try and distract him, but Bajulas would not have expected this. John Lauzon has risen from the ashes like the phoenix, and it is the case. Whilst he's had a lot of misfortune this season so far, he's now leading in this race at Daytona, and this is a critical race for him to retake potentially the lead of the Pro Championship before the season break. Tanner Dibble with the two leaders here, the DNA Racing driver, I think will be wondering where Wilding's gone right now, given the fact the two of them, when they went past the pit lane when Wilding went in, it was the case that Dibble stayed on out, Wilding went into the pits, and now Dibble's got it all to do once again as they make the way up through turn 6 onto 7, and Tanner Dibble now will find himself in that position whereby he could have a chance at winning this race if he's able to stay in the hunt, as now there's only 8 minutes to go plus the final lap. But with all the pit stops now counted for, it is the case that Tanner Dibble in that P3 position, Edwin Offer behind in P4, and then we have John Wilding in P5 here, in a race that just has not gone his way, it has to be said. But we've got Kenny Smith into the pits again. I wonder if that's for a drive-through penalty of some description. Has been caught speeding in the pit lane. But meanwhile, we look from the last driver in the Pro class here to our leader in the AM class, and Justin Braggan, after that pit stop, has come back out ahead. He is 6 seconds clear of what is Blake Phillips, and right now Justin Braggan, the middle of the pack racing driver, just enjoying this run to the end. But it's only fair that with time burning down and the strategy is now complete, we take you through that race in order with 7 minutes to go. So leading at the moment overall and in the Pro class here, but not by much. He's having to defend. It is John Lauzon from Blue Flag Motorsports who's found his way into the lead through strategy, and he's trying to hold on now. He's got Jerome Bajulas behind as a Blue Flag Motorsports driver. His teammates, of course, the two teammates who will not want to knock one another about, but they'll both be in it to win it in the Drivers' Championship. He's in P2, and it's Tanner Dibble from DNA Racing, who's currently P3, as they roll their way through into turn number 3. For it's them at the 18th time of asking. They coming out the corner here. We've then got a gap of 4.5 seconds to Edwin Offred in P4, who's had a spin there at turn 3. The rear of the car just not hooking up. A difficult day for the Ascension Racing driver after that contact with P5 driver John Wilding earlier on in the race, and that is your Pro class as it currently stands. We then have Justin Braggan leading the AM class. He's P6 overall, leader of the AM class, clear of Blake Phillips, who on his debut is 6.5 seconds behind. And here is Blake Phillips in the BMW M4, the privateer, fighting on to the finish. He's got Lee Porter closing on him, only a second off right now. Lee Porter taking 3 tenths out of Blake Phillips on that previous lap. We've then got Mark Senegal in P9 overall, P4 in the AM class. He makes his way on into the first corner of the Sunday GT Turtles driver. And then we have Kenny Smith, P5, P10 overall. And then Rodney Felk with a difficult day with technical issues with Aston Martin, but still running. He's running last but not least, P11 overall, P6 in the AM class. But we have to cut from him to our leaders in the Pro class and our overall leaders here, because John Lauzon leading, well, here's the case. He's got a bit of space to his teammate Jerome Bajulas as they roll their way through bus stop chicane. And as they come through this time, there is one of those situations where I think Blue Flag Motorsports now have settled into Lauzon being the leader, Bajulas being second, and they're trying to keep Dibble at bay. They won't want Dibble to get into that fight for the win if they can, but we ride on board here with Tanner Dibble as he heads to the end of the lap. And as he stays in the tow here at the Porsche, you can see the Porsche being benefited by the tow of the McLaren in front. And that's the thing we were saying earlier about the Porsche. It has got a high top-end speed, but it needs the toe to help it accelerate up to that speed by comparison, such as the balance of the performance of these GT4 class cars. And as they roll their way through turn number 1 here, Tanner Dibble, well, very comfortably staying in the toe, and as he comes roaring through 2, he'll be looking to the inside into turn 3. But as they come into the horseshoe hairpin, there's no such way through for the DNA Racing driver. Instead, he has to go for a late apex to try and get the power down in the run-up towards turn number 5 with the King Ford just ahead. They go for it flat out at the best of times as they make the way through turn number 4. You can see how Virgilez is able to open up that gap initially, but then the Mercedes just shows that raw, brutish straight line strength, and it closes up as they roll their way through 5. No change at the moment. Again, Dibble, I think, will be wise to look for the move towards the end of the lap once they go onto the banking rather than in the infield section, unless he can really send one up the inside and upset Virgilez's rhythm as they come out of the corner here and now head onto the bank. Turn 6 to turn 7 they go. It is a case now they're out of the infield. It's all the way round up towards the bus stop chicane, and in the draft here, Dibble has fallen back once again, but he starts to gain gradually now as they all head up into 5th gear and then into top gear very shortly. And you can see how Dibble just building up that speed up into 6th gear. They're almost hitting the rev limiter, such as how much he's pushing right now as they head into the braking zone for the chicane. And as he rolls his way up and down here, the Mercedes very stable and planted over these curves, just coming on through and heading on towards the turn 12 bank. But all 3 drivers there, all pretty much identical in their lines, all of them right on the limit of concentration right now. Nobody wanting to make a single mistake, and you can understand why. If they made a mistake, it would be tears to their race. All 3 of these drivers have a chance to win, but it is John Lauzon leading right now, who has the initiative, but it does look as though they're Jerome Virgilez, his teammate, looking for the move as they make the way to that timeline here with 3 minutes to go. That will mean when they go on to the next lap, there's 2 laps remaining here. We will have 21 laps here today at Daytona, and Jerome Virgilez has just taken the lead. He puts himself in front of Lauzon, and the problem is for Lauzon, of course, is whilst he'll want to work with his teammate, what he won't want to do is lose momentum with his teammate. They should be gaining by working together, not losing out. But I think teamwork now is out the window, it's out the question. I think instead what's coming to the fore is who wants this win more as they make the way out of 3 and up towards turns 4 and 5. But as they come charging on through there this time, you can see now how Dibble is that ever-present threat to upset the Blue Flag Motorsports 1-2 today as they head into the braking zone for that second hairpin, and Lauzon going quite heavy on the brakes. In fact, stepping a little bit wide, understeering under brake, and I think coming a bit too hot as they make their way out of turn 5 and up towards 6. Meanwhile, in terms of the AMP class, the only position that really seems to be uncertain right now is the battle for P2 between Blake Phillips and Lee Porter. Blake Phillips right now leading in that battle by 1 second over Lee Porter. We are keeping our eyes on it off camera to see if it does develop into something more serious as time goes on, but right now we're staying with our top 3 to the finish otherwise, as the focus right now is on John Lauzon here, who finds himself in between Virgilez and Dibble and is trying to now come back at his teammate in the run and down towards the bus stop chicane. And as they do, I don't think he's going to go for the move here. I think he'll set himself up as best as he possibly can, and then it's the run through the turn 12 banks, that timeline. But do keep in mind, this is the penultimate lap. This is not the final lap, and the thing with that is it's a case that Lauzon here will not want to make the move until it matters most, and that is coming out of the bus stop chicane and the run to the line. You can see here Tanner Dibble doing a little bit of bump drafting to the back of Lauzon, where he essentially bumps the rear of his rival in front to give him a little bit of a boost in speed. And as they make their way across the low line here, so the flat ground here, as they head up towards the start-finish line, it's Lauzon who retakes the lead. Dibble this time using the Mercedes strength of speed to come on through as well. And as they head on through, now it is time for the final lap here with Lauzon leading ahead of Dibble P2, Virgilez P3. They roll their way through turn number 1 here. You can see all 3 drivers trying to go as tight as possible to that apex of turn number 1. And as they make their way through 2, the reason for that is simply that they all know that a driver could go for a move up the inside at any moment, and nobody wants to be caught napping when that happens. As they make their way through turn number 3 here with the distant camera shot, all 3 drivers literally using the full width of the circuit as they come roaring past the audience here, coming to turn 4. And as they make their way on around, you can see that Dibble, they're losing out as they made their way from 3 up into 4. And I think it's the case here that Lauzon may have got the right person behind him in this order of 3 at the end of the race, and that's Dibble, who seems to be struggling through the infield section, and as they make their way to the end of the section, as they come into turn number 6 here, we've got Lee Porter into the pits. I think Lee Porter may have underfueled in the pits, as it is the case he's coming in very late in the day, which is unfortunate if so. And as they make their way onto the bank here, our top 3, well, now it is the case, it's going to be do or die for John Lauzon. He's got to nail the bus stop chicane, and then he's just got to run to the finish and hope that Dibble has not got the speed nor Bajulas to overrun him come the checkered flag. It is the case, 40 minutes is up, and as they make their way into the bus stop chicane, this time around Lauzon has an advantage of half a second, but that half a second could quickly fade. If he gets it right here, it'll be about 6 tenths. It does stand at 6 tenths as they exit the chicane, and now it's the long run. It's a long way round, and you can see Bajulas there going up on the high line here. He's got the run on Dibble, but I think Lauzon here, he's done it. He's increasing that gap as Bajulas tucks back in here, but I think it's too little too late from his opponents for as he makes his way off of the turn 12 bank. It's Blue Flag Motorsports 1-2 here, and it will be John Lauzon who makes it to the line. They weave from side to side, and it's John Lauzon from Blue Flag Motorsports who takes the win at Daytona overall and in the Pro Class ahead of Jerome Bajulas P2. And then where is Tanner Dibble in a great day for Blue Flag Motorsports? Oh, goodness me, and Tanner Dibble's run out of fuel just before the line, which means that Edwin Offred from Ascension Racing will in the end up on the podium in a surprise twist. But Tanner Dibble is literally creeping to the line. He crosses the line in the end, but he's P4, and that was a major upset for DNA Racing. John Wilding will come home P5, the final place in the Pro Class in a difficult day for DNA Racing after such a strong start. But that is the Pro Class complete, and then here he comes. It's Justin Bracken from Middle of the Pack Racing who takes the win in the AM Class by 9 seconds in the end ahead of Blake Phillips, as the privateer on his debut picks up a brilliant P2, and as he crosses the line, it'll then be Mark Senegal who capitalises on Lee Porter, I think having to make a last-minute pit stop for extra fuel. But the Sunday GT Turtles driver, after that difficult moment early on in the race, has redeemed himself, it would seem, and he comes home P3 on the AM podium as he crosses the line there. And then it will be Lee Porter who comes on through as he makes his way around, I think kicking himself for not having enough fuel to get to the end of the race, but still one to learn from. But as the Middle of the Pack Racing driver heads to the line here, it will be P9 overall, P4 in the AM class. He crosses the line very shortly. Here he comes, and there he crosses and takes the checker flag. Kenny B. Smith a lap down, finished in P10, and it will be Rodney Felker last but not least here as the driver had that difficult start. He's made it to the end. Give him a round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. He may not have been in it to win it today, but it's the case he's still got home and finished P6 in class, P11 overall. Well, what a fantastic race when all is said and done, and let's take you through those race results. So here's the case. After 40 minutes of racing here today at Daytona International Speedway in round 6 in the Middle of the Pack Racing League GT4 Championship for 2022, John Lauzon taking the win in the end by 6 tenths of a second ahead of Jerome Bajulas. It's a brilliant day for Blue Flag Motorsports. P1, P2 overall and in the Pro Class, and then in P3 completing the overall podium and the Pro Class podium, Edwin Onofre. Tanner Dibble P4 ahead of John Wilding P5. The two of them there completing the Pro Class, and DNA Racing drivers having a difficult day. Daytona not their happy place, it would seem. And then P6 overall winning in the AM class, Justin Bracken, and another dominant drive when all is said and done ahead of debutant of Blake Phillips coming home P7. Keep your eyes on him. I think he's definitely going to be one to watch in the final 3 rounds of this series. Then Mark Senegal coming home P8, completing the AM podium for Sunday GT Turtles, and a well-deserved P3 in the end. Lee Porter P9, then Kenny B. Smith P10, and Rodney Felker last but not least out of our 11 drivers, all the making it to the end, and Rodney Felker finishing at P11. That's P6 in the AM class. Well, we now come from our results to having to say thank you very much for watching, ladies and gentlemen. We will not be announcing our America stage winners here today because there are ongoing stewards investigations with regards to some of the incidents, but we will be announcing our America stage winners at the beginning of the program for round number 7 in 2 weeks' time. But until then, thank you very much for watching, and if you did enjoy the show today and enjoyed the series and perhaps interested in signing up or looking out for future series run by the Middle of the Pack Racing League community, or MPRL in short, then why not check us out on our official Discord or our official Twitter. Links available on screen there. But now it is the case that our drivers have a well-deserved week's break before they head back. So it's 2 weeks from now we'll be returning to the racing action, and when we do, we kick off the Endurances stage, and it all begins down under in Australia at Mount Panorama Raceway, known in short as Bathurst, the circuit that takes no prisoners, the walls, the mountain, you name it. This circuit has the ultimate fear factor for any class of racing, and we'll be bringing you you the broadcast for the round on Sunday, the 24th of July, 2022. You won't want to miss it, because if the opening 6 rounds of this series have been any indication of how close and intense the racing is, Bathurst is only going to crank it up a further notch as we kick off that endurance stage. But until then, thank you for tuning in. We hope you have a great rest of your weekend. I've been Paul Walsh. We've been Middle of the Pack Racing League. And until next time, remember to stay safe, stay well, stay smiling, but most importantly, remember to stay on track. Good night.